All right. Hello and welcome everyone to EDU's first TAW University of 2017. Seeing members participate in such big numbers is an amazing something to witness here. And to show our gratitude, we hope to bring you all an enjoyable and intuitive experience for the next hour/hour and a half. During the presentation, all microphones must remain muted so any interference with the speaker or recording is avoided. If you have a question, it must be written out in the TeamSpeak chat at all times. The Twitch chat, on the other hand, can be used for any other chit chat. And with all of that being said, I would like to thank you all for being here tonight and give the floor to today's speaker, our one and only Cherry.
Thank you, Carl, and been a privilege to be able to work with the ops team to put this together. It's the first time that we've actually streamed a TAW University in my recollection, so there was a lot of technical background that went into it. So I thank the staff at TSO and also EDU to put this together. Everybody can see the slide. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is going to be an introduction to the power of leadership through service. There's also an intermediate and an advanced course as well that will be coming out later on. So next slide, sir. I am Cherry, the operation commander. Started as a regular role recruit down in Gross Recon back in the day. Came up through definitely the ranks and was the first PIO under Hook that was actually put into place, and the rest is history. So I have a lot of background in servant leadership, not only in TAW, but also in my real life, which I'll get into very soon. Let's go to the next slide, please. If you wonder why we do next slide, because the person streaming it, it's a 10-second delay. So thanks for your patience there. You're going to see this name, Robert Greenleaf, come up numerous times as we go through this presentation. Might be something if you want to research this later on. He is known as the father, and this is one of his most famous quotes. Obviously, good leaders must become good servants, and we're gonna flip your whole paradigm here. So just bear with us. Leadership, everybody thinks, is telling people what to do, and this is going to be a total different way of doing it. And I know in TAW, that's sometimes how we deal with things, but we also want to develop the next level of leadership up all the way through battalions up to TFO level and then on to CC level. So this is a pretty exciting time for us. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to go over, just to give you a brief overview, we're going to start out with introduction and background, obviously, and then go through the characteristics of what servant leadership is, look at the paradox, and then also implementation into TAW. That's going to be probably one of the most vital pieces to really think about is, okay, so I get this now. How do I implement it? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's the hardest thing to do if you're not a servant leadership or don't have components of it in your soul already. So it's going to be exciting. And again, down the road, if you have questions about it, there's a vast resources of information as well as I'll be available as well. Next slide, please. Introduction and background. Let's get right into it here. Next slide. Let's start at the very beginning. Very beginning. So you have to ask yourself, why are you here? And this might seem harsh, but I really want you to soul search and think about this. If you're looking for, personal fame and fortune, you don't understand how many people come to me and say, "How do I get the stars behind your name?" And my response is always time and effort. So if you're just looking for fortune, fame, stars, ego stroking, all this kind of stuff, um, shortcut, a quick, easy fix, it's not for you. It really isn't. There is no quick and easy fix. This is something that I have not even perfected yet, and I've been working on this for 30 years. Wimps and bullies, you don't need to apply. It's for the dedicated individuals who are out to benefit TAW, which also consequently will help you in your employment and your stakeholders in your community and your church and your clubs and whatever else you do out there. Um, there's a lot of things in TAW that will transfer over, and this is definitely one of them. So, no offense to anybody, but we need to take those off your plate right now. Next slide. But then that comes up, well, if you're not looking for all that, I hope, then what are you looking for? And that's the best way to serve our community. Good, authentic leadership in TAW. A challenge. This is not something that you can go through this course and say, I'm a servant leader. You need to exhibit it, show it, and talk about it with other members of your leadership team. It will be most rewardable. You will see benefits that you've never seen before in your leadership as you go through this. Um, it is a humbling experience, and what I like about it the most, it is sustainable results. You instantly get results. So if you're looking for all that, then welcome to the club. Let's go to the next slide and begin. So why servant leadership? That's a question we have to ask. Why that? There are different styles and different leadership styles out there. There's 8 main core ones that I've studied um, through my master's in public administration. You know, so you have to ask, why am I so interested in and passionate about servant leadership? And with my experience with servant-led organizations, you have one that was supported servant leadership, and it was a breath of fresh air. And that's why I love this community so much, because it really supports servant leadership. There are other ones that are indifferent to it. They don't care. They're just going to do what they're going to do because they've done what they've done. And that's kind of like school where I teach and I'm the program director. It's, I got to deal with a lot of that. They're indifferent to it. They're going to do what they've done because that's the way they've done it. Then there's ones that are adamantly opposed to it. And those are the ones that I don't want to say rule with an iron fist and kind of things. They're all very different results. It just really varies. And I've really seen those. And I know you have too, in the different jobs that you've had, organizations you've been members of, and those kind of things. When I first started to get into servant leadership and exhibiting it and showing it and seeing the results, I kind of thought it was a little touchy feely, and I wasn't too fond of it. It's, I have a lot of different words for it I can't say here, but I thought it was touchy feely. I learned it was one of the most difficult things I could ever do, but it was the most rewarding as well. Um, I've done it correctly and I've screwed it up many times. But you learn from it, you find solutions to move on. Um, and I've been through the pain, so I'm just trying to spare others. I'm trying to, again, continue on the leadership, the premise of TAW University through our organization. Then we get into adoption. You got to recognize that the support for this is rapidly growing. This is not something that is just a TAW thing or a church thing, because that's a lot of it. But it's everywhere, and people are starting to get a hold of it. And I'm not talking like TAW. I'm not talking like churches and clubs and things. I'm talking like AT&T, the big hitters, British Petroleum, all these major corporations, General Electric, etc. The gap of awareness and understanding still remains in TAW. I see it all the time. No offense to anybody. And that's why we have these courses. And I'm just looking to seek and close the gap. Let's all get on the same page. So next slide, please. I'll go through this very briefly. Everybody asks, well, where does this come from? Where, did somebody just make this up? Was it something that was written on a bar napkin one day? No, not at all. We're talking 600 BC, all the way back. Lao started developing others to it. He saw that, and then you have 375 BC. I'm not even going to try to pronounce those names. Okay, so no offense.
I was
And
born
then
about
first
that
century
time.
AD, yeah, of course, Jesus of Nazareth, very well known for his servant leadership. And then in the 70s, that name again, Robert Greenleaf, was probably one of the first that really started writing about it and publishing about it and teaching about it. And then others picked it up and started following in his footsteps, of course. That one, you want to serve first. And that's why we're all here. We want to serve this great community and keep it going and make it better than it's ever been. Next slide, please. So who is this cat, Robert Greenleaf? Let's get a little bit into who this guy is. And if you've ever read his book, I recommend, like I said, you can get him online as well. At least look through excerpts of it and stuff. The father, if you will, he worked at AT&T. He consulted after that. You can see his inspirations there. Much of his career actually in A&T was in leadership training and management. And that's where all this came out. And then he went in later on in his life into theory and his essays and all those kind of things you see at the bottom, which this slideshow will be available, so you can research those as well. Again, I have 3 of his books, and they're astounding if you're interested in this. So I would recommend at least picking one up. They're on the cheap because they're old. Next slide, please. So after Greenleaf, you see all the things he did there. So who came next, right? Because no offense to the guy, he's old, right? So we look at who came next, and then you look at there's the Larry Spears, definitely the obviously involved with the Greenleaf Foundation, Greenleaf Center. He authored a bunch of servant leadership things, and then Autry, you'll see that name come up again. Magazine Group, again, another major corporation. He authored a lot of books, and then Hunter, probably 2 of the most popular, it says, books, which they are, and went around and got paid millions of dollars to go around and consult some of the biggest corporations in the world, and help change their style of leadership from the 50s to if you would, the 60s and 70s, and an evolution came thereof. Let's go to the next one, please. So, servant leadership, there's different components. There's different pieces. Just dive into that word. I'm an English teacher by trade, so you look at the word servant, and it's one who serves, person to the service of another, recognize our debt to another, a person working in the service of another. I think you get it now. A key thing of servant is a subordinate. And even if you're CIC in this community, you are still a subordinate of the community, because it flips. Okay. When you're a battalion officer, you're a subordinate of the people above you, but you're also a subordinate of the people you're serving. I'm a subordinate of the board and the top 5, and also of all this great community and the people that I serve. So you have to look at servant in a different light, as both ways. And that's something a lot of people think, oh, I'm a servant, I'm just serving somebody else above me. No, you're serving people below you as well. You're serving as a whole. And then diving into the word service, you look at you're helping, you're benefiting somebody, aid, work done by another person that helps somebody else. Welcome to my world. Benefit of duties for a superior or a servant, and more importantly, being helpful and useful. So those are the basic. When you dive into those words, that's how they lend into servant leadership. So then let's look, next slide. So we know servant, service, let's look at leadership. And that's a big one. And that's one that I got to be honest with, that I struggled the most, because everybody wants to be a good leader, right? And as I went through TAW and went through my job, starting out as a teacher and then a program director and then a president of a company, a president of a nonprofit, a city councilman, et cetera, I just wanted to be a good leader. But just to say and have you in a leadership role doesn't mean you're a good leader. It just means you wound up there. So, what does it take to be a good leader? Um, it's hard to define. Somebody that leads, obviously, right? If there's an issue or something that comes up and you can't find a solution to it and lead your corps, your division, whatever it is, your battalion, yeah, you got to lead it. And there's risks involved. Somebody that guides, directs, you're obviously in charge. Influence of power. Everyone thinks I got all this power. I laugh at them. Rules. You set up things, but they're for solutions. A person who's in front, who goes first, who steps out, who takes those risks. A person that is in charge, authority. I mean, that's leadership. And you see all the words there. I use a lot of web things, and it's a combination of things, and you've got to dive into each one of those and embrace each one of those to be a true leader. You can't just say, okay, well, I appreciate everybody, I'm a leader. No bueno, Captain Bob. Doesn't work that way. Next slide, please. And we get into the whole practicing servant leadership, and it's there's a lot of words on there, I know, but it's amazing that the vast involvement that goes into servant leadership. But I just wanted to throw this up very quickly to enlighten you to go, wow, I can use this in my real life. I can use this in my family. Whatever you do, you can. So it's amazing. There's so many touches on it. Let's look at the next slide. This is going to be adapted. It's a Greenleaf definition. So we've looked at the definitions of the base words. Now we're going to look at Greenleaf's definition of the servant as a leader. The servant leader is a servant first. Change your perspective again. The natural feeling, you want to serve. You want to serve first. You want to help. When I first stepped into the PIO position, I didn't want it for stars, glory, fame. I wanted to help this community and help communicate out to the world how great this community is. That was my goal. It's a conscious choice that brings one to aspire to lead. Some people get dumped into it. Scary stuff. Sharply different than one who's a leader first. So if you're dumped into it, then hopefully you're going to learn all about it to become a better leader. But the people that learn about it, they will naturally transgress into a leader. There's no doubt about it. We're always looking for people that have leadership skills. The best test and the most difficult one to administer is, do these served grow as persons? Do the people under you, the people you're serving, grow as people? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more themselves? Or are they just trying to be you? And then, what is the effect of the least privileged in our community, if you will, as far as, let's go to recruits. What's the effect on the recruits and the PFCs by the leadership of the people that are serving them? And will they benefit? What's the value added? These are the things that, I'm not going to read the slide to you, but it's very important that you understand that this is Greenleaf's definition, which is all this is based on. So it's pretty valid in my view anyway. The next slide, we're going to go to breaking it down. Again, even more. We broke down the words, defined them, got all the way to Greenleaf's definition. Now what we're going to do is look at the actual characteristics of, and this is again Larry Spears, you saw him on a slide above, He actually broke it down even farther, which was very helpful. And I hope this is helpful for you. Next slide. So when we talk about breaking out characteristics, we want to talk about breaking them out into dimensions, if you will. And this is actual one of my favorite visuals on servant leadership is you have the components of servant and leader, and then the combination thereof. And what we're going to do is look at that and break those down even more. Next slide, please. And you saw there were 10 on there. So focusing on serving others through the characteristics. The first one that you saw on that left of the Venn diagram was listening. Listening is active, not passive. You have to use those skills, and it's again one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life is learn how to actually listen to people and shut up. You also, and people will sometimes, if they're in communication with me about something, they'll hear me repeat things. Repeat what you hear to make sure you understand what they're saying. That is an active process. The second thing is top to bottom. Listen to everyone around you, from the CIC or the CC all the way down to the PFC. Listen to everybody, all the shareholders. 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen to everything. And then listen completely before making a decision, before proposing changes. Hear all the parties. Go out and seek information, seek advice, and add it to that decision-making process. Proposing a solution and then asking what they think is not really listening. That's just saying, "Oh, you got a solution or a problem. Here's your solution." They go, "No, that really wasn't what I'm talking about." It's very different. The other one that was on there was empathy. Separate persons from their work. You have to be empathetic. I don't know how many times I bring up the phrase when I'm talking with people in this community, that is just their personality. Separate their personality from what they're talking about. Because I, in education, work with a lot of, no offense to anybody, but a lot of knuckleheads and crazy people, okay? So I've got to separate those personalities out and get to the root of what they're talking about. So you have to have empathy for people's personalities. And if you've ever done personality training, that also lends into this. Walk a mile in their shoes. You need to understand where they're coming from. You may not agree with them, but understand, have empathy for them. And then understand that some people are more personal than others. There's no sense about that. I mean, it's just the way it is. Some people have their heart on their sleeve. Some people won't show any emotion at all. It's okay. Be open to share with people that are comfortable, but don't pressure those that are not. I mean, if you go to somebody and ask their opinion and say, "I'd rather not," okay, that's fine. The third that was on the left on the bottom was healing. Help your staff and your people in your battalion and corps and divisions become whole. It sounds touchy-feely, I know. But it's really important to help them feel a part of it and be a whole, and then understand their history. Again, help people become whole, and then build their future together. And that's where healing. I like to use that as together with their vision of the future of the organization. And that vision is what you're going to communicate on. You will be stronger as a team. My example on this was the most difficult one of my career in TAW, and that was the change from Sentinel to EDU to online learning, and it wasn't met very well. And I kept repeating, and the EDU guys could tell you that, the word vision over and over and over and over again. I said, you've got to understand my vision, and I expressed it and expressed it and expressed it, and now we're living the fruitations of that. So it's not something easy to do, okay? But it's all about that vision and help build them together. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at the ones that were in the center now. At least I believe these ones. They might have been all the way to the right. Which I think these one that all the way to the right. The awareness, if you will, um, of yourself and your organization, and this is where you have to be honest with yourself, and that could be the hardest thing. Um, it was with me because I was a really bad leader before because I just thought leadership was telling people what to do, um, and then figure out why they did a shabby job. It's because they didn't buy into the vision. So know who you are. Um, Greenleaf puts it as sharply awake and reasonably disturbed. He put it very clearly. An aware leader is always awake and reasonably disturbed is, the constant trade-off of the organization is making it better. You know you're going to have failure. Know there's weaknesses in the process, misalignments. Focus with the mission, vision, and culture. And culture is huge. Persuasion's another one. Is a leadership characteristic. It's opposite of positional authority, not using power to coerce, but leveraging it for authority. In my teaching world, I call it brainwashing because I deal with underprivileged kids who come from very bad back lives, and I've got to convince them they can have a future, and they do. So it's not using the power to coerce, but leveraging it and getting the authority, getting the buy-in. Convince and build consensus as quickly as possible among your team and the people you're working with. Naysayers will say there's not time. I say baloney. You've earned the right to be in your position. Have people trust your decisions, and again, that comes through time. Consensus also, please understand, does not mean all people, but it means the majority of the right people. Conceptualization is another leader characteristic. You have to conceptualize, not big, hairy, audacious goals, but make sure they're what we call SMART goals: specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time delimited. These are something that I work with every day in real life, and I've transferred into TAW. Make sure your conceptualization of where you're going, your goals. We talk about mission, vision, goals. They're SMART goals. You're able to paint a clear picture, and that takes conversation, and that takes listening. It all blends together. It takes persuasion. Then take time for strategy. Most leaders today, there's no time. I live in your shoes every day. There's no time. So you have to take time to strategize. Ensure time is left for focusing on strategic concerns. And when you see like Trekkie and I, or Sub and I, or Doc and I, or somebody and I up there chatting in channel, that's the one we're spending a lot of time on, to strategize. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What's it going to look like? How does it appeal to the mission, vision, goals of TAW? I mean, it's just a lot that goes into it. And then my favorite one of all in this section is foresight. At school all the time, I say, why you want it? They always ask me, why you want to do this? Because I want to see the train coming before I get hit. And having foresight is very difficult, but you have to immerse yourself in what you're doing to see it and have experience, of course. Consequences of present decisions on future outcomes. What's going to happen if we do this? And you can if things to death, but you also need to understand there's a time to act and move on. But whatever you do, there's an equal reaction, right? Newton's law. So you need to understand that. Next slide. Next slide. Let's go next slide. So the ones that were in the center, we talk about, again, servant characteristics, stewardship, growth, and building community. And here we are in TAW. Entrusted with resources of others. You have people all around you. Recognize that it's not your battalion. It is not your fire team. It is not your division. It's just one that you're entrusted to manage. They are not your staff. It's a team that looks to you for leadership and guidance. So there's a difference there. And you have to release that, people. You have to release that. It's not yours. I don't know how many times I say my program at work. It's not my program. It's the kids' program. That's who owns it. I don't. I just sit there and answer phones. Commitment to growth of people. Big, huge part of the secondary research in Greenleaf's work is growing people. Are they green and growing? Or are they ripe and dying? And most people, leadership doesn't happen in a week and go, okay, yeah, he's a good leader. All the time, you're always working with your people, always working with the people above, the people below. Again, we go back to that theory. Recognize everybody is green and growing, and everybody has the potential. Everybody does. Okay, but you've got to get them servant leaders to be able to see it sometimes. Also realize they're not just your favorites. It's everybody. It's everybody. Everybody has the comment I hear every now and then. Well, Jerry just got in position because him and Brave are buddies. Oh, brother, you want to hear some of the conversations we've had together? We work together as a team. So you need to understand. It's where it gets tough because you have your buddies that you've come in, you've played for, could be months, could be years with. But you also need to understand the best path for growth. Maybe someone outside that circle. And you may have to let them go. I've done it several times. It's not easy, but you gotta. True servant leader insists that supporting their future development is assisting them in every way possible, maximizing outplacement resources. And then the last one, of course, is building community. Effectiveness. Communities help each other out. Or they don't just say, sorry, that's not my job description. And I know this is going against chain of command. But you also need to understand, if people come to me and I always say, check with your chain of command. And I'm not saying it's not my job. I'm helping you, but I want to help you in a proper way. So put it in perspective. You have to be effective. Don't say I don't have to do that. Okay. People always ask, how do you become a leader in TAW? Well, help out. Offer to help out. Again, that you help each other out to be better. Be better as the whole is greater than the sum. And I know you've heard that before. And a strong community, obviously, is a happier workplace. It's a happier community in TAW when we all work together. If everybody's not working together, it's like an engine that will never run because all the parts aren't clicking together. Next slide, please. Paradox. This is used in education all the time and it cracks me up. A paradox, a statement that is self-contradictory because it often contains two statements that are both true, but they can't be true at the same time. Think about that. It contains two statements that are both true, but in general, they can't be true at the same time. Let's look at how that works with servant leadership. Next slide, please. So here you look at servant leadership, and it's a balance, okay? And this is the hard part. Another hard part is not to go through all these, but let's look at planned. Everything has to be planned, but it also has to be spontaneous. And it's a sliding scale. It's never stuck in the same place. It has to be serious, but enough to laugh, like our community. How many times you hear, play games, have fun, but we've got work to do. You've got to, you're going to be busy, but you've also got to listen. And you've also, on the very bottom, is the most important one, lead, but don't forget also that you're serving. Next slide, please. And I'm sure when you see this slide go up, many of you have probably experienced not only in your personal life, but maybe in TAW. They're not easy to balance. A few examples for you, because everybody likes examples. I know I did when I was going through this. Be great enough without pride. Team gets credit, you get the blame. Happens to me all the time at work. Be compassionate enough to discipline. That's a hard one. Set high expectations. Don't be soft, but follow through. Be right enough to say I'm wrong. That was another difficult one for me, to say, oh, I screwed up. How do we fix this? Just admit you're human. No big deal. Be wise enough to admit you don't know. And then find out quickly, but don't mislead. Don't make something up. If you do not know, find out. There's vast resources out there. Google. And then the busy enough to be a listen is, or busy enough to listen is, oh God, at work, you're all working hard as well as I do, but beware of the busy manager. They don't lead, they work. Are you a servant leader if all you're doing is just busy, 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 busy? I get out of my desk, I walk around the room, I sit with the kids, I chat for hours. I'm not getting any work done, but I'm getting the most important work done. Talk to your employees, talk to your battalion staff, talk to everybody. It's an amazing experience. It's when the most important things. Doc and I changed the most important things in TAW over playing a game and chatting. That I'm not kidding you. Next slide, please. So the greatest paradox, just a few of the underlining ones that are inherent in service and leadership. Leading enough to serve, a balance, again, that one big yellow sliding scale thing, leading enough to serve. And these are the probably the most important ones. Seek opportunities always for improvement, not only in yourself, but most importantly with yourself and your battalion, your division, etc. Listen to everybody. There's no job too big. Do you think 3.0 is a small job? Don't even want to go into it. Build consensus to lead, not manage. Very, very important. Next slide. So you might be asking yourself, I kind of get this, or I do get this. How do we implement it? And how do I find out more? Next slide, please. Again, this was another difficult piece for me. I know this. How do I implement it into what I'm doing in TAW with the military structure? How do you do that? With the past that we have, how do you do that? And if you look at a hierarchy, and this again a little bit goes into culture, but it's changing the perspective on the structure, not changing the structure, don't get me wrong, but it's changing the perspective. The traditionals on the top, you see that. And this, in ours, it would be obviously CIC, and go to Army Commander, Support Commander, blah, 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 blah. You've seen that all over the place. And then you go to the next level, which is the first among equals, basically. Everybody's equal. PC is equal with a battalion commander. Blah, blah, blah. Everybody's equal. But servant leadership, when you get down to it, well, in first among equals, I want to go back. In practice, it seems a bit impractical. It is impractical. But people try to do it that way because they're trying to make change in their culture. So understand that. Organizations, especially if they're big, they can't operate like that. There's no physical possible way, and TAW couldn't either. That's why we have the military structure. Whether you agree or disagree, understand why. The flipped pyramid is the servant-led organization model. It flips it around. It recognizes that all staff, all members are contributors, belong at the top of the organization. Everybody is. If the employees come first, if the members come first, then they're happy. A motivated employee treats everybody well. Okay. A member is happy, so they keep coming back. It's not one of the enduring great mysteries of all the time. It just works. So that flip pyramid, take a mental picture of that. Because typically it's the, shareholders, management, staff, and it's a trickle down. Biggest people, obviously the largest group of staff. But when you look at that right upside down pyramid, that's the way it should be. Or always should be concerned about our membership. How are we doing? Or are they happy? Are they playing? Then you look at management. I know Subrat all the time is we're talking. Are they overworked? How do we change it? We added more cores. We broke it down. And then you look at the top. And no offense to the board, including myself, but they're just a little part. So it's all about that upside down pyramid. Let's go to the next slide, please. So team performance. How do you align your battalion, division, or corps current practices with servant leadership? And again, this is a broad paintbrush of what it could look like and how it looks like. The non-servant leadership approach is to be command and control. You see that. We always do this in TAW, created once, revised when there's a turnover, and it's written by somebody at the top. And a lot of things recently in the last year have come from the bottom. So you see how TAW is actually a servant leadership model as we look at the bottom one. But the middle one there is our servant leader approach, very objective, very understanding. It's always dynamic. It's never static. And the initial draft, again, is by the member, by a member. The performance standards, which you've seen or we've talked about, you got to look. Are you meeting your performance objective, if you will? The member initiates reviews by their leadership. Hey, tell me how I'm doing. Have you ever asked your leadership that? Hey, tell me how I'm doing, or do you wait for them to come down and tell you? Don't be afraid. And then also a servant leader, make sure that your staff below you don't take on too much. And ask them, are you overburdened? You need help? And then get them help. That's how you build leadership. Somebody down below, hey, could you help this guy with this? Maybe, And if they help, great. We've taken care of a problem, and you've started building a new leader. So it's these are just ideas on how you can implement those. I'm not saying you have to do it, but they're not bad ideas either. Next slide, please. So in education and leadership, we talk, okay, so how do you develop the muscles for servant leadership? It goes back to athletic training as well. You have to develop, the consistent over time. How do you hone them and get progress and feedback? Step one, we're doing it right now. Training, research, mentoring. Understand what's expected, communicate. The second one is the most difficult time. It's a 360 feedback loop, and identify those gaps. Find out where we're at, how we're doing, what can we do better, and then have a plan, of course, to close the gaps. John Tafferty, Bar Rescue. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. One of my favorite quotes in the entire world is, "I don't embrace problems, I embrace solutions." Don't worry about. I don't say don't worry about the problem, but don't worry about the problem. Okay, how do we make a plan to close the gap? How do we make a plan to make it better? And you're not placing blame in that process either. Oh, it's his fault, so now we got to fix it. No. Oh, hey, look, we got a problem. Don't matter. Let's fix it. And then, of course, have your SMART objectives. And you should answer to somebody about, against the objectives. What are you trying to do? And that way there's a check and balance again, and it goes back into that step 2, 360 feedback. So that, in a nutshell, next slide, please. We've gone over it in the last 50 minutes. We've emerged into the individual pieces. We broke down each of the individual pieces. So it's been a very introductory. Again, these slides will be available post-presentation. There's some links there and some books you can look up that I recommend. Next slide. Maybe it's just because I have, an education, but the references to where this information came from is listed on that page. And next slide, please. And of course, this has been a presentation by TAW University, which also offers guides, the Academy, the Online Learning Center. Everybody should know we have a Facebook page and Twitter, which all this was add-on. Use any process possible if you have feedback. Email is best for me. I'll just throw them in a folder and I'll get to them and I will respond to them. If you have questions beyond the ones we're going to open up the floor for here in a minute, I will also take those as you're going through battalion leadership or whatever you're going to be doing and you go, well, how does this fit in? Don't be afraid to ask. Again, I'm not an expert, but I'll offer my opinion. And last slide, please. So I appreciate everybody being here. We're going to open the floor to questions, but again, mic's muted. And please type them, PM them down in the channel. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask at this time. I think everybody's out mowing their lawn.
You got one from Red there.
Oh. He said that pride is not included in servant leader, but as servant leader, it's being proud. Good. Very good question. Actually, man, you were listening. Thank you. Example, I'm very proud of my program and what I've done. So you are correct, but you can't let that be the reason why you're driving the engine. If that makes sense. So yes, be proud of what you do, but don't boast. That was in there as well. Okay. So it's very, very important to separate out pride, if you will, from servant leadership. Yes, you should have pride in what you're doing. But if pride is why you're doing it, no. If pride is all you talk about and boasting, no, because you're here to serve. Hope that answered your question. That was a very good one.
Got Todd's next. He's like, how do you best manage your staff if they are talking on many roles and are still trying to do their job?
I deal with that every day. You redefine their role. That's all you got to do. But you do it with your ears open, not your mouth. And with the staff member, I work with 2 staff members that like to do each other's job, and I just sit them down and I go, so what is your job? Okay, what is your job? Well, okay, then so we have a separation. Okay, and then we talk about, okay, well, and then I just tell them this is what I think we talked about 6 months ago about what your role would be, and I don't think we've changed that, have we? And then listen. So again, it's that 360 feedback communication, and hopefully have a history to go back to when they were introduced into that role, and they should. Again, they're trying to help. I get that, but make sure they're clear on what their role is, and thank them for helping. They're just trying to be a good leader, but when you're stepping on other people's toes and they're getting mad, that's the problem. That's when you need to bring the powwow together and open up the ears. MGM, is it used by cooperation, or is it created and adjusted by TAW admins? This, I don't understand the question. This slideshow, if you will, I pulled information from the resources and other slideshows, and then we reviewed it as a staff, and that's what we're presenting today. And it's been adjusted over time. Absolutely. If the servant leader goals from the division of staff, basically that's not an uncommon problem. That's when we sit down, like I did with EDU or Sentinel at the time, and went over them and went over them and went over them. Didn't say anybody wasn't doing them. Don't get me wrong. Aren't we working toward this? This is our vision, not my vision. This is our vision. Do you understand? Can you see where this could go? Do you see the great value of this? And then you listen. And like I always say, maybe I'm just wacko. I don't know, but you just said everybody's got to be in the same room. All the shareholders, all the people, and the goals will be different because everybody's got different ideas on where TAW should go. Everybody's got different ideas on where the division should go, where the staff should go, how they should implement the game. There is a balance, but it really is always, always, always based upon your mission, vision, and goals. Where are you going? And if you have to always come back to that. The top five always sits down. A lot of times at board meetings, we'll have the mission, vision, and goals up. Every decision and everything we talk about has to be filtered through that. So if you don't have goals for your battalion or your division or whatever, that's where you start, and make sure everybody's on the same page and give them ownership and listen and build that vision. And then if everybody's got the same vision, everybody's on the same train going to the same station. What if someone is showing really good skills and servant leadership but is really lacking one aspect of it? Develop them, work with them, sit down with them in a very listening, not talking. Hey, you suck at this. You need to get better. No, I wouldn't do it that way. That persuasion piece, how do you rephrase it? Instead of saying, you really aren't good at this piece, but you say, oh, today's talk is going to be about blah, 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 blah. And you develop that. And then you say, how could, show me, what do you think that would look like? Personal interviewing. I use that phrase all the time. What do you think that would look like? Tell me what you think that would look like so they can envision it. Once they envision it, they can do it. And then you get feedback. Pretty powerful process. Lead by example in the Marine Corps. Thanks for serving. And yep, don't be asking anything you're not ready to do. It's a great practice. It would fall under this topic. Always be a good listener. Yes, good comments there. You got to put yourself in their shoes, like I said, see their perspective. And again, that's a very difficult part, Marine, is understanding how to do that, because you want my way or the highway. Yeah, sometimes it's that way, but listen first, explain the vision, and get them on board. And some people don't have the same vision. That's okay, but this is our vision. But you build that vision together, not in your office with the door closed. Oh yeah, there's no room for I in conversation. Oh, Benji, spot on. And that was in another slideshow I had as well, and on my couple of posters I have at work. Is one of the benefits of servant leadership model that people who are not leadership positions can still practice? Amen. You got that out of this, Restora. Yes, everybody should be a servant leader. And again, it's building it as a team, building as a group, building as a division, building as a core. Everybody should be practicing servant leadership. If everybody, and I'm not, again, bashing anybody, but if everybody in TAW practiced servant leadership, Sub wouldn't be scratching his head for CLCs. No offense, but you know what I mean? Or you as a DC wouldn't be scratching your head for the next DO. Because it would be glaringly obvious. And that's the goal of this entire TAW U. That's the goal of what TAW U does, is building better leadership in our community. Not to say we're lacking in it, but you know as well as I do, turnover is a key. People get real life issues, they got to go. Their role, if they're not in an official leadership position, what can they do as a servant leader? What I did in GRA, I started keeping stats that we didn't have that would help the battalion. I started advertising and recruiting on different platforms that were previously there. Obviously, all within conversation before I did anything with my leadership and the people below me as a team. There's a lot of things that can be done. Get out of the box. Well, they can't take attendance. No, get out of the box. What else can they do? Can they help your PIO? There's just a lot of things. And again, I've been there. Want to do stuff by the book only. Yeah, they don't want to be flexible. That's a tough one. Is deal with people that they want. You got to do stuff by the book. That's why we have policies and procedures. Okay, and you don't want to stray from it. I'm not saying you should, but I'm going to give you some words here to use. Embrace the gray. Okay, because when you're swimming in the gray, the middle, if you will, you will still have to adhere to policy, but you'll get out of the box and understand how you can adapt to that policy and make it work. How in the heck, in the past structure of TAW, did we ever bring MMOs into this community and make it work? Get out of the box, embrace the gray as a team, and then follow policy. It's pretty fun. Make certain things mandatory so you can help your team be better. Still, I wouldn't make them mandatory. Again, sit down, mission, vision, and goals. They will be there. You got to change that. And Sub and I had these conversations, mandatories and all this stuff. And yeah, it's great we have mandatories. They should be here anyway, right? So let's look at that instead of why people are missing mandatories. Doc spoke to that in the last meeting. Why are they not here? Don't ding them and yell at them for missing mandatories. Everything all right? It's like kids that come in, they got a problem. Everything all right? Find out what's going on first. Help them. That's servant leadership. And then help them become a leader. Do I think this will change a lot of people? Some, I hope. It's not going to change everybody, Red Shade. Unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in their leadership style like I was for years. And you've got to kumbaya and let go. And it's, again, early on, I said, it's the hardest thing I ever done in my life. I'm still not perfect at it by any means, but you've got to let go first and embrace, at least try it. And over time, it'll change your philosophy, your culture of yourself. And that's the number one step. Once the servant leader made bad decision, reflects on the morale of the members. How do you prevent this? Mr. Joy, that's a very difficult position. Again, again, you hit the nail on the head when you use leadership, not servant leadership. If the leader, and again, I'm not bashing any division, don't get me wrong, I'm being honest and open and fair here. But if leadership is making decisions without sitting down and developing mission, vision, and goals, and it doesn't fit those vision or the mission or the goals, I would say that's a bad decision too. But you've got to have that first step done. And that's what I recommend everybody do if you haven't done that yet. Make sure everybody's on the same page, because then nobody is going to have bad morale. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, that follows our mission. That follows our goals. Oh, that's one of our goals. This is how we're going to enact one of our goals. By the book, stuff doesn't get done. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody pitches in. Servant leadership. Name 3 actions that bring your attention to the right servant leadership skills in a person. 3 words. Oh, 4 words. How can I help? The second one would obviously be a listener. And then the third one would also, I would say, somebody that's non-judgmental. I work with a lot of people that are very judgmental, and you're never going to get through to them. I keep trying though. Like I say, if you beat your head against the wall, you will make a hole. But you got to be patient. Again, another difficult time because you want it now. How do you know if you're becoming a servant leader? Because you wake up one day, you log into TeamSpeak, and you're the operation commander. How's that? Seriously, and it really, no one's going to come up and give you an award for it. But when you become a true servant leader, when you're looking for the next DO or whatever, it's a no-brainer. You are developing the people underneath you, and the people underneath you are developed, and you're working with them to do that. Takes time, takes over time. Again, you go back to the start and develop it over time, and make sure you do it in the right, sequential order. A person identifying themselves, is it mostly done by a higher up? No. Matter of fact, I know a lot of people that are great servant leaders, are myself, that it's usually the people below me that make the comment about servant leadership, or below somebody else, that they are a good servant leader or a good leader, and they're being a servant leader, but they don't know what the word means yet. So characters a person can identify in themselves to check if they're becoming a servant leader? No. Go back to the presentation. Those are all the little key components. There are a lot of them. When we broke down the words, we broke down the characteristics. It's the characteristics. Are you living and breathing and acting as a servant leader? Or did you go through the slideshow and go, I want to become a servant leader, and then you don't do anything? You're going to have to spend people some time on this and think and self-reflect before you can get into it, because you got to start with yourself. It's not easy. And I'm sorry if I'm being too like kumbaya, but it really is the way it is. How much do you think it currently applies to TAW? 100%. How close far as an organization do you think we are? I think we're at 60% there. I think if we were at 80 to 90%, you see it. I'm not saying we have a bad culture. Again, don't get me wrong, but I think you'd start to see a lot of very neat changes. And then what level of our CLC needs to work on it, in your opinion? I think everybody needs to work on it. I don't think it's one part of the chain of command or any other. I think it's from the PFC all the way up to the CIC, including myself. So I don't think anybody, you don't want to extract anybody and say, boy, you guys really need to work on this. Because if you don't, it goes against the whole entire premise of servant leadership. And what if I have a person who is perfect for the job, he takes interest in it, but he is horrible to work with? Separate personality. Okay, and no offense, Carl, but when I first met Carl, I was like, who the heck is this guy? And you have those, and you just have to reflect back, and you have to go, okay, it's just his personality. I can work with it. Have you ever worked with Mark? I mean, come on. So you separate that personality, and then you get a great working relationship. So I don't think anybody's horrible to work with. I look at it as entertainment, but that's just me. So it's, I appreciate all the questions. If you have any more, feel free to hit me up. Again, I'm not an expert. I will say that again. But as you can see by going through the slideshow, there's a lot to it. And I didn't mean to get Carl, but I would go through it with your staff or the people that you're working with in your battalion, division, whatever, and just talk, not necessarily present it, but just talk about those characteristics and present them. And I think you'll see that's probably going to be the first change, and then you go into mission, vision, and goals, and all those kind of things, and make sure you have the top mission, vision, and goals up. So with that said, Mr. Has, if you have anything you'd like to conclude out, but I definitely want to thank you all for being here and taking time out of your busy day or night. As you can see, I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very passionate about this community. And I just hope you all got something out of it, and it changes the leadership as we move forward, and helps leadership as we move forward. Again, the premise of TAW University. I'll turn over to Mr.